In this video, I'm going to show you all you need to know about one of the best amps you can buy for the studio for under £200. Hey guys, I'm Tyler. Thank you for tuning back into the channel once again. If you're new around here, consider hitting that like button, and if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell too. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about this under my right hand, which is the B100R by Ampeg. I think this is a real sleeper of an amplifier, and if you are looking for an amp to record and just a great amp in general for very little money, and you're happy to look at the second-hand market, this is an amplifier that I would highly recommend. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm first going to run you through all the specs of the amp, then I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration with a looper, run through each of the controls on the amplifier, and then after that I'm going to put different sound samples back to back with some drums, play some fingerstyle, slapstyle and pick style, and give you an idea of what this amp sounds like with a variety of different very usable settings. So first off, let's run through the specification of this amp. So as you can see straight away, this is a very vintage inspired Ampeg, and it's very reminiscent of the Ampeg B100R, and those are the kind of tones that we're aiming for with this combo. So it's a 100 watt combo, as denoted by the 100 in the name. It's covered in this diamond Tolex, which is exactly the same as the B100R, and we have a 15-inch speaker just like the B100R as well. The cabinet design is very close to that of the B100R, with the exception of the B100R, and it's ported at the rear, and that really imparts quite a lot of that classic Ampeg tone that we're used to and have heard on so many different records. Looking at the control panel from left to right, we have a 0 decibel input for passive instruments. We have a minus 15 decibel input for hotter instruments than that. We have an ultra low switch, which is 7 dB at 40 Hz. We have an ultra mid switch, which cuts at 600 Hz. We have an ultra high switch that adds 7 dB at 5 kHz. We then have the gain knob and the two signal and peak input lights next to it. You have the bass knob, which is centered around 40 Hz. The low mid knob, which is centered at 300 Hz. A high mid knob, which is centered at 1,500 Hz. The treble knob, which is then centered at 7 kHz. And then the master knob. Next up we have a line out, which is just like a DI out, but it's a jack input. So you will need either one of these, which is a jack to XLR adapter, which will slot right in there, or you can just run a jack to a DI box and then to the front house. And then we have a phones out as the last input on this amplifier. That will be controlled by the master volume knob as well. And then at the far right we have just the on and off switch. The light on this amplifier doesn't work because it got damaged during shipping, and as you can see, this amp's taken a little bit of abuse. It's done a good amount of work, but it's still a great sounding amp, so that's something that should give you a bit of confidence when you're buying these second hand. On the rear of the amplifier you just have the output transformer, the input jack for the power, which is a standard IEC cable lead, and the two ports to the rear to increase that bass frequency response. So now you've seen the specs of the amp, I'm going to run you through each of the tone controls on board the amplifier and show you the effect that each of those has. When I originally got this amplifier I was actually kind of disappointed with its natural sound, but one of the things I've learned with this amp is just to really turn the knobs and get the sound that you want and not worry too much about how much you're boosting. With a lot of gear I'm used to just having a really great sound as it is and then tweaking with the EQ a little bit. But actually with this amplifier, being not afraid to turn the amp knobs quite a long way is one of the best ways you can get some great sounds out of it. So first thing we want to do is just to set the gain level. So the gain should be set so that the signal light is pretty healthily green most of the time and occasionally flashy on the peak button. So I'm just going to push the gain right up, and you should be able to see there we get just a little bit of flash every so often from the red, and that's exactly how we want it. Now I'm just going to turn up the master volume, and then I'm just going to run through each of the controls from left to right. So that's showing you all the different tone controls and how they affect the sound. As I said earlier, really boosting them isn't too much of a problem. I do think that the tone controls are sufficiently reactive, but they're not overly sensitive, so you can dial quite a lot into each of them. There's not a massive boost on each. I think it's about 7 dB to 11 dB depending on which control it is, and that means that there's quite a large margin to boost without having a massive effect on the tone or blowing it completely out. So one of the things I do with this amp pretty much all the time is run the bass on about 9 or 10, and that brings it much closer to that classic B15 sound that I've heard whenever I've played through a B15. I think the low mid at 300 Hz is a real punchy sound. It can cut through the mix really, really forcefully. The high mid is set quite high, so 1.5 kHz is a lot higher than most high mids. For example, on the Aguilar it's about 750, and most high mid you'd expect to be around the 1K mark, so it's a little bit higher than that. And in that way the ultra mid is the primary shaper of the mid range. If you put that ultra mid, press it in, you're going to scoop out that mid range, but it kind of smooths it out a lot as well. 600 Hz it's an uncommon frequency to have the mid-range control, but I really like what it does on this amp. And then the treble control is again quite high at 7 kHz is high for a treble control for bass, and in that way it really just adds a little bit of cut, a little bit of air, rather than making it an abrasive treble sound. This amp is particularly strong in the high mids, and I think that kind of gives it a sound that's not quite as characteristic as the B15s that I've played. So what I'm going to do is show you how I emulate, to my ear, what I've perceived from B15s that I've played in the past. Everyone's going to be different, they're different eras, different tubes and all that sort of thing. But when I've played them, they've always been very warm and very thick, and not really had that kind of scratchy high mid-range sound that I think this amp naturally has. So I'm going to show you my setting for the B15 from the B100R. So first thing I'm going to do is press the ultra mid button in, so we're scooping a little bit at 600 Hz. The gain, kind of where it is, where we left it before. The bass is going to be pretty much on 10, somewhere between 9 and 10. Cut a little bit of the low mid, but not too much. Leave the high mid where it is, and leave the treble where it is as well. And I'm just going to turn it up and tweak till I hear what I think is my perception on that B15 sound. So that's pretty much what I perceive to be the classic B15 sound from the B100R. We're getting not too much super deep low end, so I haven't engaged that low boost. We just have a nice low end from the bass control, a good solid mid-range content that's really adding some definition, but not really cutting across in an abrasive way, and then just a nice vintagey type treble, not too much brightness, but just a little bit there to give some definition. Let me know what you think of the B100R so far in this video, leave that in the comments below. And now we're going to move on to the sound samples and just the back-to-back comparison with fingerstyle, slapstyle and some pick style. that was the tone demo of the Ampeg B100R. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and let me know which was your favourite setting from the tone demo. So as I said at the start of this video, I think this amp is very much missed when it comes to a great amplifier that is available at a low price and does a really great job for a number of different things. If you're the current owner of a studio and you don't have a B15, I'd really keep your eyes peeled for one of these. They are really, really good. The thing that really brought home to me how good this was in the studio was the recent session I did on a couple of things at Puzzle Maker Studios for different artists. I can't disclose or demonstrate the tracks at this point in time because they're not out yet, but I will definitely try and get hold of them and maybe do a little follow-up video on the difference that this amplifier made. But I brought it along to the session. It was a drums and bass tracking session at the start of the day. There was only one input left, so we just went for DI bass through my Avalon, and I said, oh, let's just re-mic it later, reamp the sound through the amplifier. So we had it all sitting in the track, worked on the rest of the things for the day, and so I grabbed my Warm Audio microphone, which is the microphone down here, which I think is a great sounding microphone for bass. Definitely check one of these out if you want a microphone for bass purposes. I just love the sound of the 47 style microphone on bass sources. And took that microphone, brought this upstairs and plugged it into reamp and just started miking it, and you can hear it as it records through on the track plays through, and you output it to the amplifier and record the sound back through, and it just sounded amazing. Suddenly the bass went from being a good direct sound that was there and present to being a sound that was really defined and punchy and had enough definition but also warmth and roundness in the mix, and it just felt like you'd push the bass forward in the mix whilst not getting in the way. It was filling that hole that you hear the bass in on those classic records, and that was just kind of that B15 thing. You just heard it straight away, and that was when this amplifier to me became a really great tool for £200. And as soon as we finished tracking, the engineer on that session said, can I buy this from you? When you're finished with it, you need to let me buy it for the studio, because it made that much of a difference and it only cost £200. I don't personally think this amp sounds amazing for slap stuff. It doesn't have a tweeter, but if you're into anything classic, vintage, rock stuff, I use this for country stuff and it just fits. It's just a perfect fit. The versatility of the controls really help, but for me, I go into it, place it down on the floor, put the mic in front of it, turn the bass up to near 10, and just do a couple of little tweaks if I need to, and that's it. A great sound without having to do anything, and for me it is that mix sound. When you come down to hear it in the mix, it just sounds great. I think the way the mid-range comes across from this amplifier really helps on smaller speakers, so when you are listening to a track on your car stereo, even back on the studio monitors, they're not massive bass speakers, and so the mid-range content that you get from this cabinet design, this speaker, just really helps you hear what you're doing and give a real great warmth and cut across a mix. For live stuff, I think this amp is perfectly usable. Don't try and do massive gigs with just this and no backline support. I played a small pub with this amp on quite a busy night and it did a good job, but I did feel like I was kind of pushing the amp a bit more than I'd want to, so I wouldn't really consider this if it's your only source. But compared to a B15, you're probably going to get a bit more volume out of this, being it's 100 watts. And you are also going to have the option to DI out. So you've got the DI, you can just plug that straight into the PA and you're really sorted. It's definitely a more versatile option than the B15. I don't think it's probably as luxurious sound as the B15, but for most situations, the fact it's a lot lighter, it's kind of around the 12 kilogram mark, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's not too heavy. You can move it around, and it's got this great solid handle which helps carry and lift. It's a very usable, really suitable amp for many situations, and for £200 as well. If you can find one at that price, I would, without hesitation, buy one. To conclude, if you are into old school vintage type tones and you record a lot, I don't really think there's any reason you shouldn't have one of these. I would get one in your locker as soon as possible. If you're into much more modern styles and you like a massive low end and a real deep extension and really bright treble, This amplifier isn't going to cut it for those kind of styles because it doesn't have a tweeter, and the 115-inch speaker is a good sounding speaker, but it doesn't do that luxurious super low sound, and if you're running effects like octaves and things through it, it's just not going to really cut it the way you'd want. So if you are looking for those kind of tones, I would look elsewhere. So those are my thoughts and demo of the Ampeg B100R. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and also let me know how close you think this gets to the B15s that you've heard and played through. Don't forget to check out my Instagram, which is linked below, and if you are new around here and you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest of my videos. There's a gear demo every Tuesday, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and keep up to date. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you around soon.